Good morning, and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast, March 19th, 2024. This would be episode 111? 111? I think it is. Paul Green coming to you here, a podcast by a dreamer for dreamers out there. My dream currently is to pursue comedy and acting and all of that fun stuff that goes along with it. So, this is another travel edition. I am currently staying in a motel in Thousand Palms, which is out by Indio, because I had a show last night in a Denny's. I've made it, everybody. I think that my dreams have come true. So, how did I get this gig? So, there's this comic who lives a little north of LA. It's actually in Simi Valley. I don't know how much you know the geography. It's about maybe 45 minutes, an hour north of sort of Los Angeles proper. And the guy's name is Marty, and he is a great guy and produces these sort of kind of small indie shows. And I have been performing at those shows for quite some time, actually. He was doing them at this little sort of juice bar type thing, like an organic juice bar for a while. And I'd done a handful of gigs for him at that juice bar, maybe like 2 or 3. And you know, really kind of small, intimate audiences, you know, maybe 10 or 15 people. It's, you know, it's like about the size of like a medium-sized Starbucks, not a venti. And, but man, I just always have so much fun just kind of doing these smaller, low-pressure, you know, gigs. And to me, it's just the fun challenge of, can I make this small group of people who, bless their heart, came out to a show that, you know, probably isn't really an ideal show for them. You know, it's almost a little bit kind of like they're more there for us than we are for them, which is not really supposed to be the case with entertainment. You know, entertainment is we're supposed to be there to entertain them, not necessarily that they are there so that we can have an opportunity to entertain. There's a difference, trust me. I'm not sure if that sentiment makes sense. But matter of fact, I think the last time I did his juice bar show, that might have been one of the last shows I did before the pandemic hit. Because I distinctly remember driving home from that gig and stopping by a grocery store, and the grocery store was just cleaned out. Just barren shelf after barren shelf. You know, all of the water, all of the paper goods, and a lot of the other, you know, even just, you know, regular food and stuff. It was... that was kind of the first sort of eye-opening, like, oh my gosh, is this the end of the world happening right now? Because this seems to be how, like, every zombie movie or disaster movie starts is, you know, showing up to the grocery store and there's no supplies. So, yeah, that would have been... obviously, 2020, sometime March of 2020 would be the last time that I remember. I don't think I've done one of his gigs since then. He has reached out to me a couple times, but, you know, obviously I'd moved back to Arizona, and it just didn't really work out for me to head out to his gigs. Even though I have a lot of fun, they don't, you know, they don't really pay. Which at this stage of the game, you know, I just figure, hey, if I get some money, that's that's a huge bonus. But I am just at this stage where I will gladly accept anybody who has a stage and has an audience, and Marty does that. So anyway, somewhere along the lines, he moved to this Denny's, sort of this back area in this Denny's in Simi Valley, and he had a good, decent amount of people come out to the show, and I was happy to do it. By the time I had got up, he had like a little portable speaker, and unfortunately that had cut out, and so I actually didn't use a mic at all. I just went a cappella, and just, again, it's kind of like a back room, and it was pretty intimate. There was probably 15 maybe people there, and I had a good time. There was also, I was a little discouraged because I've been trying to work out some new material and some new ideas. I tried them a handful of times over the weekend at my shows in Gilbert, and then I tried them at the open mic yesterday, and then tonight I tried it again. However, I moved all of my new material towards the end of my set. So I opened, well, first I just did a lot of riffing and connecting with the audience, because it had been a little bit of a long night. They had seen, I think, 5 comics before me. They had been there almost an hour and a half. So, it's not like a tightly run show. Plus, I don't know when that microphone died out, which means, it's probably hard to hear. So the audience did seem a little worn down by the time I got up. So I really just came in with a lot of high energy, and I was interacting with them and riffing. And then I didn't do my new material. I did my older material, which has been going well, or which, I've pretty much have already worked out. And then I was like, oh, well, now since they're on my team, and now that I got them going, when I go into my new material, it'll have a higher probability of doing well. And it just didn't really do that well, and it's a little discouraging because it is actually getting to the point to where I have to go like, oh, I'm not on the right path here. It's like, it's not like oh no, maybe I just need to adjust something here or here. It's like, well, I've been making a lot of adjustments over this weekend, and I think it's time that I either just let some of the ideas go, or I have to do a pretty significant rewrite. Like, there's something that I'm missing. And yeah, and I don't know what it is. Obviously, if I knew what it is, then I would be experimenting with the change. But I've done pretty much most of the same jokes about 5 or almost 6 times this in the last 3 days. And it's just not quite landing, and it's not fun, but that is part of this job, is got to have enough humility and self-awareness to go, okay, I think this is funny, but enough audiences have not really responded to it. And it's not like all of it's bombing, but it's definitely... there's something that's not connecting in general. So, I've done enough of a sample size to know that it's not the audience, it's not me, it's definitely something is off with the joke structures, with either the joke structure or the content, how I have originally wrote out, how I thought the concepts would be have the best impact and the best punchline. So, I'm not like discouraged, like, ooh, but I'm just kind of like, oh, well, that's kind of a bummer that I've put a lot of work into trying to get these sort of new flavor jokes working, and they're not. And so I'll need to rethink that. But been thinking about that. a lot this weekend and a lot tonight or last night. And so another thing I've been thinking about is I got a comment on my post from yesterday. Yesterday I was talking about that I had... Did I see it, or was I just thinking? Oh, yeah, I had seen the Michael Jackson play, and then it got me thinking about, like, people who had sort of overly involved parents, like Michael Jackson. It was his father, and then I referenced, like, Tiger Woods, and then the Williams sisters, Venus and Serena Williams. And the comment that was made was, in essence, like, well, yeah, they had those very involved, almost like tyrannical, committed to their success. These parents committed to their child's success, but maybe the kids didn't really like that, or maybe they would have preferred a different life. And I didn't, when I was calling attention to the fact that, a lot of Michael Jackson's success had to do with the fact that the Jacksons had this father who just was dead set determined on turning his children into successful entertainers to help pull them out of poverty. And I think that's actually the exact same narrative as the Williams father. The movie was called King Richard. Obviously Will Smith played their dad. So I guess it's Richard Williams, I guess. And that almost seemed to be, if I remember correctly, I watched the movie, but I don't remember. I seem to remember that was the plot point, that, he wanted his daughters to be successful at tennis so that they wouldn't be poor. And I don't know if that's the same narrative with Tiger Woods and his dad. I mean, if that was a motivating factor. I don't seem to remember that being a motivation, or at least not like a very predominant motivation in Tiger Woods and his dad's situation. I just think his dad really loved golf, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But that specific element was brought up in the Michael Jackson musical, that was, the Jackson's father, that was like really his primary driving force, was he didn't want his family to be impoverished anymore. And I'm pretty sure that was the same narrative with the Williams family, although I'm not as confident in that. But anyway, when I was talking about it yesterday, I think I had a little bit of perhaps a sort of lamenting vibe of like, oh, well, I didn't have a tyrannical father or mother who, demanded some sort of great athletic or entertainment, success or whatever. But that actually wasn't what I was really saying. I was just pointing that out as a coincidence that extremely high performers do tend, as far as I can tell, to have some sort of intense childhood training. Not all the time. I'm not saying that is like a necessity, but it was just something that I observed. But even though that's my observation, I actually wasn't necessarily saying that that's desirable. And it just got me thinking to how I think it's easy that no matter what our specific life journey is or experience is, I think there's a tendency to have a desire to always want something else, or to want what somebody else has. Like, let's just take Michael Jackson for a second. He had this really strict, almost tyrannical father who was so hard on his kids. Now, the benefit of that was they just became killer entertainers. And then obviously Michael Jackson became one of the greatest entertainers of all history. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, like Michael Jackson will never know what it's like to have a quote unquote normal life. You know what I mean? Like he probably didn't really know what it was like to have a childhood, and just to be able to like go to school and hang out and, go to recess, like, can you even picture that? Can you even just picture Michael Jackson just like sitting in a desk in school, like just learning math? It just seems like, oh no, he spent 12 hours a day since he was born, since he was an infant, learning how to dance and sing, and do it better than anybody else. So I just think it's really easy to fall in this trap of like, whatever my life is, I envy somebody else's life. And the flip side of that is, like how many people who have a desire to be entertainers, a desire to even be a pop star, who will never, ever even come close to touching the fame and glory of a Michael Jackson. There's one Michael Jackson, and there's, and then there's everybody else. And maybe there's a handful of performers on the entire planet who can even relate to his influence, to having that level of fame as an entertainer. So yeah, I think it's easy if one is anonymous and is seeking an entertainment career, which means notoriety, which means visibility, which means fame. I think it's easy for somebody who doesn't have fame to want fame because they think that that's going to bring whatever it is they think it's going to bring. But then, you hear it all the time about famous people who are like, man, I wish I could just go out in public and, go to a restaurant without getting constantly bombarded with autograph requests. I'm actually friends with Jason Alexander's son, Jason Alexander, who played George Costanza on Seinfeld. And we were hanging out. We did this show last year together, and I was just talking to him about that. I just said, what do you really want? Like, how do you want your life to plan out? Do you want to have the same type of fame and success as your father? And he just said, like, having a father that famous, he goes, it was tough because it's like we could not even go out to eat in public without just getting constantly bombarded, And so it was so interesting hearing, the son of probably one of the most iconic sitcom characters and actors, gosh, probably at least in the top 20, you would think, George Costanza. I mean, my gosh, Jason Alexander was just so pivotal in that role and just so incredible. And here he has a son who, by the way, is one of the most talented human beings. I mean, his son is and just an incredible guy, just one of the most remarkable humans. And every time I've performed with him a handful of times, and every time I do, I'm almost, it's not like a starstruck energy, because I don't really get starstruck, but there's a little bit of insecurity just because of his talent level. I'm like, this guy, it's like, I don't know, probably the equivalent analogy would be like, a rookie baseball player, his like first games into the major leagues or something, or like, somebody who played in the minor leagues and then gets their first game in the majors. I feel like whenever I perform with Gabe, I feel like I'm a minor leaguer and I need to go step up to the majors just to hang with him and his talent, because he's just so good. But I just thought that was really interesting, to where, here I am going for this dream to hopefully acquire a degree of fame, at least enough fame to where I can, perform and be successful at it. And yet here is, the son of one of the most famous actors ever in Hollywood, and he's kind of going like, yeah, I've actually seen what fame looks like, and I don't think I want that in my life. At least that was kind of the sentiment, when we were talking. So yeah, I just think that my recognition that some of the top performers in their respective fields seem to have come from maybe a bit of a tyrannical, overbearing parent, definitely was not me wishing that I had the same. I had a great childhood, and I was very grateful and am grateful for my parents. And, I kind of had the other way to where I had a lot of freedom to explore and express myself. And I was not under constant, tyranny and emotional abuse like it seemed like Michael Jackson was. His father just all tell him, well, you're never enough. You have to be perfect. And, putting all of this weight on a 5-year-old shoulder, like, hey, if you don't perform perfectly, then, your entire family is going to be poor because of it, So anyway, that was just something that when I was talking about it yesterday, I don't think I clarified. And it really does come back to, I don't like the be careful what you wish for, because that just seems so cynical. It's like, no, wish for and dream for what you truly want. But I just think it's important to also recognize that whatever it is that we want does also come with some, I don't want to say adverse, but, it's a well-rounded life. Nobody's life is just a frictionless, no negative emotion, no discouragement, type of life. And for that reason, I think it's all the more compelling to really go for what you want. Maybe the lesson here is to just get to try to get as clear as possible on what getting what you say you want actually entails across the board, as much as you can. Like understanding like, oh, well, if I actually do get famous, I'm going to lose a lot of anonymity, and I'm going to lose, a lot of privacy, and I'm going to be a lot more open for criticism, and people are going to feel that because I'm some sort of celebrity that gives them the right to feel a certain way about me or to talk negatively about me. And, TMZ's going to, have their cameras up in my love life and my personal life or whatever. It's like an understanding of like, oh, well, just because I get this thing that I say that I want doesn't mean that my life will now be free from challenges. The challenges may take different form, they may take different shape, but they're still going to be challenges. And I think it's just a question of what challenges do I want, and what benefits will I get from experiencing those challenges, and how do I feel that will give meaning and purpose to my life because I have accomplished the dream, or I am living the dream, but I'm also more than happy and willing and understand that with that dream comes some challenges and some difficulties and some maybe not so great things that also will still need to be managed and dealt with on a day-to-day basis. So anyway, those are just the thoughts coming off the old Chrome Dome as I continue this journey to figure out, what my own dreams are and what it is that I really want. And am I willing to take the good with the bad? And furthermore, what can I do to pursue that dream in a manner that is fulfilling and sustaining and, brings a little bit of joy and excitement and happiness into my life. So with that, I hope all of your dreams are going well. I hope that you are finding joy in the journey, having good experiences. And I love all of you so much. Anybody who takes the time to listen to my story, I hope it is beneficial to you. maybe you get a little nugget or a little insight, or maybe if anything else, you just go like, oh, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, which I probably don't. So maybe it'll help you further know what you're talking about to hear somebody like me who is so clueless. So anyway, love you all so much. This is March 19th, 2024, episode 111 of the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast, a podcast for dreamers by a dreamer. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.